So he went on to found NORML in 1970, and as a point of personal privilege, I'm going to bring up that in 1971, he came to Texas because 13 people were serving life in prison for small amounts of marijuana, and he met with students and young people that were interested in the cause, and Texas NORML was founded as a result of that visit, so thank you for that. He continued to serve as executive director until 1979, and then he went on to lobby for family farmers and artists, and then he was hired as executive director for the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and he served there from '89 to '94. In '94, he returned to the NORML board, and then he was rehired in '95 as the executive director, where he served for another decade. Then he stepped aside for a new crop of advocates, for it to be a new day at NORML, and he still serves as legal counsel. He goes on college lectures, and he's published books. So please help me recognize and welcome Keith Stroup.
That's far more than anyone could possibly want to know. But you know, I'm tempted to think back to the first NORML conference. It was either 71 or 72, and it was held at a church here in Washington because there's no hotel that would have allowed us to rent a room. And it was an interesting conference where one of our attendees was drying a pound of marijuana out. Apparently he brought it up from Texas. He was a DJ in Texas. He was drying it on the top of the hood of his car, and the police were sitting across the street watching everything he did. So the first day, I spent most of the day getting him bonded out of jail. And I have to say, it is absolutely marvelous to see such a robust group of people of all genders, of all ages. I mean, she was talking about Dirksen, and I understand why most of you in the room might never heard of Everett Dirksen. But there's some of us are old enough that we were actually back at it even way back then. But what's important is the power and the permeation we've had now to reach into positions of power and have influence. We dreamed about it during those early years. I assure you, I was once asked in the mid-'70s, early '70s, by someone in the media how long I thought it would take for us to legalize marijuana. And I'm not sure if I believed it or if I said it because I was trying to sell a line. But I said I thought it might take 10 years, and that was 45 years ago. So it's been a little bit more of a challenge than we realized when we started. The reason for that is not secretive. It is that Gallup poll had done a survey the year before we started NORML in 1969. Prior to that, Gallup did not even consider marijuana legalization serious enough to ask it as a polling question. So you can go back and Google or whatever, and I don't think you'll find a single poll earlier than '69, certainly not a national poll. And at that time, right before we founded NORML, 12% of the American public supported what we were calling for, 88% opposed it. So when you're dealing with those kinds of misinformation and prejudice and bias and leftover from reefer madness, obviously, I don't care how good you are or how hard you work, you're simply not going to win the day, not on a contentious socialist. And so part of the joy I feel in living long enough to see us begin to actually legalize marijuana is the fact that we have indeed largely won the hearts and minds of a majority of the American public. And the majority of the public are not smokers. Only someone else used this earlier, but 14, 15% of the public basically are regular smokers. And it doesn't much matter what race or gender. But right now, we've got at least 5 polls showing 65% to 68% support for full legalization, folks. So that means that we're winning because we won the hearts and minds of the non-smokers. And that was what was a difficult challenge. Of course, the smokers supported it as hell. Our ass was on the line. We were hiding out in the alley in a circle, passing the joint around, wondering if anybody was going to come in and bust us. It is marvelous to see that despite the incredible length of time it took, and remember that during many of those 4 decades, the arrest rate was above 300,000. It reached as high as 850,000 a year. It's still over 550,000 a year, even as we feel ourselves winning the issue. I think at one time NORML totaled up to been over 26 million Americans arrested on marijuana charges just since 1972. So, although people initially like to ignore us and laugh us off by suggesting that we were all about getting high, the reality was that was an incredibly destructive social policy and still is in the majority of the states. So it's important work that you're all doing, and even as every year now we seem to pick up 1 or 2 or 3 new states, thank God, and I think that's going to continue. I mean, I think New York and New Jersey can't be too far behind. I think the whole East Coast has still got to go. Now that we picked up Michigan and Illinois and the Midwest, I'm an old Midwestern boy. I wasn't sure the Midwest would ever get over their bias against marijuana, but they are. And also, by the way, it's interesting what the survey data shows. There's a group called, I think, the Third, you would know it, the Third Way, I think, that did a great analysis of some of the survey data on who supports marijuana. And what they found was, it was not a pro-marijuana vote. It was an anti-prohibition vote. They had learned that prohibition caused more harm than the use of the drug itself. Now, I don't know why the hell it took 40 years to figure that out. I would have thought after alcohol prohibition, within 12 years, we figured it out back then. But I think the difference is we didn't have a federal agency lying and exaggerating and propagating all the misinformation about alcohol that we did with marijuana for all those years. So for people who are my age, my contemporaries, it was awfully hard for them to let go of this concept that marijuana was evil. It wasn't just dangerous to your health, it was an evil substance. It was sinful for the religious support that we now continue to still look for. It's a marvelous time to be alive if you're a marijuana smoker. It's truly never been better. I enjoyed the discussion on an earlier panel about comments about getting high. As I just said myself, I don't consider this issue primarily about getting high. I think it's an issue of personal freedom. But I will tell you that there is absolutely nothing wrong with the idea of getting high. And I think we need to develop the courage. We need to develop the courage to say that in more and more forums, to stand up and be identified. You know, when we founded NORML, I think the gay rights issue and the marijuana legalization issue were about in the same spot. Neither one enjoyed much support. For many years, I saw the support grow more quickly for gay rights than I did for marijuana. And I think it's because of the large numbers of courageous individuals who are willing to stand up and make sure people saw that gay people are just good people who happen to be gay. As the senator said a while ago, that if you don't like gay marriage, then don't have one. Well, if you don't like marijuana smoking, then don't smoke it. I don't give a shit if you smoke marijuana. I just want you to leave me alone. I also want to acknowledge Diane Russell. I thought she had put as a recent legislator that she made the point that it is important sometimes that we discuss getting high and that we don't always hide hide the issue or hide the arguments only in medical benefits. Of course, it's incredibly beneficial for millions of people with serious illnesses. But for most of us who smoke, we don't smoke in a traditional sense because we're ill. We smoke because it makes us feel good. And that does not seem to me to be a bad thing, so long as there are no harmful side effects. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I started smoking in 1965 when I was a freshman at Georgetown Law School. I've been smoking ever since, so I guess it's about 55 years. I'm a 75-year-old man, and it doesn't seem to have hurt me a hell of a lot. I want to take a moment to state my appreciation to the current staff at NORML. We have they are naturally mostly far younger than me, thank God. They're more in touch. But they bring great skills to the task. We do a better job of training and providing help to our various state affiliates than we used to. We have a bigger staff, we have a bigger budget, we're in a healthier shape. We have certainly a more effective presence in Washington because of Justin and Eric and the rest of the work that everyone does. I think that we have every reason to feel positive that the change will only accelerate over the next 5 years. I really think probably in the next 5 years, we may be successful at stopping the arrest of smokers. We won't get legalization in every state in 5 years. Some of those southern states will take a little longer. But I think we might stop the arrest of all marijuana smokers, responsible smokers, in 5 years. I certainly think we ought to be able to get the federal government out of the picture. Excuse me a second, I have cotton mouth. I hate to admit that with you for that might cause you to wonder what I was doing at lunch. Short-term memory loss is simply too great for me to do that. But we are indeed at a place now where we can focus on the nuances that we wanted to deal with back in the early 70s, but we couldn't as long as it was a crime. The ultimate goal at NORML, first, of course, we want to stop people from being treated like criminals, and that's the basic first step every place. Secondly, we want to make sure all patients that can benefit from it have access. But generally what we want is, we want responsible marijuana smokers to be treated fairly in all aspects of their lives, period. We don't want to have to fight to retain custody of our minor children because a nosy neighbor smelled marijuana and reported us to the Child Welfare Agency. We don't want to have to be charged with DUID without the slightest showing we were impaired because we had some THC, arbitrary level of THC in our system. We don't want job discrimination. The idea that you have legal marijuana in states, but yet in most of them where it's legal, a private employer can still fire you without any showing that you were impaired on the job. Now, that's bullshit, folks. And that is, in fact, what we tried to set about in 1970. I started NORML because of some work I had done with Ralph Nader. I wanted it to be a consumer lobby. But so long as they were still arresting us and treating us like criminals, if I would have suggested, for example, to a prosecutor, I think you should have the marijuana tested in the laboratory and I want it labeled accurately after the THC and the CBD, they would have thought you were an idiot. What are you talking about? They can seize the marijuana. You can't force them to test it or label it or anything else. Well, now we are getting to the point where we can. So over these next few years, even as we get to where we're no longer arresting people, our job's not done until we have responsible marijuana smokers treated fairly in all aspects of their lives. Now, let me end by saying this. I mentioned earlier that I've always considered this to be only incidentally about marijuana. I think it's about personal freedom. And most Americans, honestly, there's no question about it, overwhelmingly do not want the government coming into their home to know what books they read or what music they listen to, how they conduct themselves in the privacy of the bedroom, or whether they drink alcohol or smoke marijuana when they relax in the evening. It is none of the government's business, and almost no Americans want the government to have that right, yet they still do in most states, as you understand. There was a wonderful Supreme Court case that I like to remind people of, I think it was in 2003, out of Texas, called Lawrence v. Texas. And they discussed the privacy provisions of the First Amendment and the liberty interests protected by the Constitution. Justice Anthony Kennedy, who was a Reagan appointee, writing for the majority, said the following: "At the heart of liberty is the right to define one's own concept of existence, of meaning, of the universe, and of the mystery of human life. It is a promise of the Constitution that there is a realm of personal liberty which the government may not enter." Well, folks, with your continued help over the next few years, we're going to restore a measure of that personal freedom to the lives of tens of millions of responsible marijuana smokers all across this country. Thank you.